My name is Emily Parker, and if you had told me 5 years ago that a single act of kindness from my boss would change the entire direction of my life, I wouldn't have believed it. Back then, I was a 27-year-old woman scrambling through life like it was a race I never trained for. I had a college degree I wasn't using, a job history full of short stays and layoffs, and a bank account that always felt like it was one unexpected bill away from collapse. But the day I walked into Hartwell Industries, everything began to shift. Slowly, gently, and with the kind of compassion most people don't expect in a corporate environment. And the person responsible for that shift was my new boss, Daniel Hart. I remember that morning as clearly as if it happened yesterday. The sun was still climbing the sky, casting long rays across the glass walls of the office building. My palms were sweaty as I pulled the door open, my nerves buzzing like electricity. It wasn't just a job to me, it was a lifeline. I needed stability. I needed a place to prove myself. I needed someone to give me a chance. The receptionist greeted me with a bright smile. "First day?" she asked kindly. I nodded. "Emily Parker. Welcome, Mr. Hart is expecting you." I had read about Daniel Hart before the interview, not because he was famous, but because former employees spoke about him online with a kind of loyalty and admiration that felt almost unreal. Words like patient, fair, principled, empathetic. In the world of demanding corporate leaders, that combination seemed rare. When I stepped into his office, he stood up immediately, extending his hand. "You must be Emily," he said, smiling in a way that instantly eased my nerves. "I've heard good things. Glad you're joining our team." Good things. I barely had anything impressive on my resume. Somehow, though, he saw something and decided it was enough. He walked me through my responsibilities, explained the team structure, and pointed out who I'd be working closely with. The more he spoke, the more grounded I felt. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't intimidating. He wasn't one of those bosses who acted like their time was too valuable to spend on you. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in making sure I had what I needed to succeed. "Don't worry about getting everything right on day 1, he said as he handed me a binder. "Or day 10, or day 50. My job is to get you where you need to be. We'll do this together." That word, together, was one I wasn't used to hearing from someone in charge. I'd always felt like a small cog in a very large, very loud machine. But in that moment, he made me feel like I belonged somewhere. Like this job could actually be a place where I grew instead of a place I tried desperately not to drown. Those early weeks were tough. Not because of the workload, but because I wanted so badly to prove myself. I stayed late most nights, poring over spreadsheets and training material, afraid to be the weak link on the team. I had this fear that if I slipped up, even once, I'd lose everything I had just gained. And though no one told me I needed to stay late, I couldn't help myself. One evening, long after the rest of the office had gone home, I heard a soft knock on my cubicle wall. I lifted my head to see Daniel standing there with his jacket over his arm. "You're still here?" he asked, eyebrows raised. I felt embarrassed, like I had been caught doing something wrong. "I'm just trying to get ahead," I said quickly. "I want to make sure I'm doing things right." His expression softened. "And you're doing great, but I don't want you burning out before you've even settled in. Go home, rest. Tomorrow is another day, and we're not running a marathon here." I wanted to argue, to insist I needed the extra hours. Instead, I nodded. "Okay, thank you, Emily," he added as he turned to leave. "Working yourself into exhaustion isn't the same thing as excellence. Excellence comes from clarity, balance, and consistency. Don't forget that." No boss had ever cared enough to say something like that to me. A month later, I made my first big mistake. It was a small accounting error, just a decimal in the wrong place, but it snowballed into a problem that affected one of our reports. I caught it before it reached the client, but it was already visible internally. My heart sank. Memories of past jobs and their harsh managers flashed through my mind. I had been yelled at before for mistakes far smaller than this. I approached Daniel's office with shaking hands. "Do you have a minute?" I asked. "Of course," he said. I explained everything, rushing through the details like pulling off a bandage. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and clasped his hands together. "Well," he said calmly, "thank you for telling me." My breath froze. I expected disappointment, anger, a lecture. Instead, he asked, "What did you learn?" I blinked. Double-checking entries is important. And slowing down. I shouldn't rush. "Exactly," he said. "Mistakes happen. What matters is how we grow from them. Now let's fix it together. Together. There it was again. That afternoon, he worked alongside me to correct everything. He didn't micromanage me, but he also didn't abandon me to handle it alone. It was the first time I realized what true leadership looked like, not authority but partnership. The months that followed were filled with growth. Slowly, I became more confident in my skills. I took on new tasks, handled small projects, and learned how to manage my time more effectively. Daniel was always there, not hovering, but available. He checked in when he sensed the team was stressed. He offered encouragement when we faced tight deadlines. He never belittled, never shamed, never misused his power. He believed in people, somehow, even when they didn't believe in themselves. The biggest turning point came nearly a year into my job. We were preparing for a major client presentation, a project I had helped build from the ground up. At first, I was supposed to assist Daniel during the meeting, taking notes and handling documents. But 3 days before the presentation, he called me into his office. "I want you to lead it," he said. My heart practically stopped. "Lead it? Me? You know this project better than anyone," he said. "And you've earned this moment." I felt panic rising. Leading a presentation to a multi-million-dollar client. That wasn't something people like me did. That was something confident, polished, accomplished people did. "I'm not sure I'm ready," I whispered. He smiled kindly. "No one ever feels ready. Growth isn't comfortable, Emily. But it is necessary. And I'll be right there." The day of the presentation, I was trembling inside. But when I stood at the front of the conference room and looked at the expectant faces of the clients, something shifted. I remembered how much work I had put in. How Daniel had trusted me. How months of guidance had prepared me for this moment. I took a breath and began speaking. And to my shock, I didn't falter. The clients asked questions. I answered them. They smiled, nodded, took notes. By the end, they applauded the proposal. After the meeting, Daniel approached me with pride shining in his eyes. "You were phenomenal," he said. "I hope you know that." I couldn't speak for a moment. I felt tears welling up, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that I was finally becoming someone I could be proud of. A month later, the company announced promotions. My name was on that list. When Daniel handed me my certificate, he said, "You earned this. You put in the work. All I did was give you a chance." But he had done more than that. He had given me hope, confidence, a safe place to grow, a sense of belonging I had never known in the workplace. Years later, when I eventually became a team leader myself, I carried everything I learned from him forward. I listened, I encouraged, I supported, I shared mistakes, celebrated victories, and believed in people even when they doubted themselves. I became the kind of leader I once needed. And all of it started with a boss who chose kindness over authority. Patience over pressure, guidance over intimidation. Daniel Hart changed my life, not with grand gestures, but with simple, consistent humanity. And that is something I will carry with me forever.